Well, welcome everyone to a new series that Let's Talk ICT is starting. This session will be on website testing. It introduces the idea of the importance of testing, what principles we follow, and some techniques that we use here at the state level. And then the series will also progress into talking about testing with assistive technology. And we put a lot of work and time into thinking through how that can be done, and so each session we will demonstrate the selected few types of devices. And at the end of this session, we have a slide that focuses on those. So we're excited to start this series for you. Our presenters today, it will be Lainey Strain. She's the web accessibility expert for ITSD here in the state of Missouri. Kyle Bora is an associate app developer for ITSD in the Department of Higher Ed and Workforce Development here in the state. And then I'm the program coordinator at Missouri Assistive Technology. So today, the three of us will walk you through what is accessibility testing and why is it important, and who does it benefit, and what's involved. We're going to cover kind of the who, what, when, where, and why pieces to web accessibility testing. And to start, I'm going to turn it over to Lainey for you to speak on why are we testing.
And I need to unmute. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to start off with the why are we testing? So, okay. So, just even outside of what we have on the screen here, we'll be getting into this as we go through a lot of the slides here, but we are testing to create that equal access across the board. But all of that is kind of based on guidelines and laws and things like that, that everything kind of, grounds the ability to do that. And we are able to create equal access because there is something called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And also you may be, from here on out, having it referred to as WCAG for short. These guidelines give us the ability to have testable success criteria, which makes the ability for people to test and to know whether or not they're meeting compliance guidelines or not. So these universal standards are really important. And then just to kind of expand on that, the state has its own mandate that was created, and a law was created back in 1999 that based itself on Section 508 and WCAG. We currently sit at the version WCAG 2.0, and in the very near future, we're going to be moving to WCAG 2.1 at A and AA. And so there are also a lot of federal laws that at the federal level that have really helped push this along. And one of them being the Section 508. And they started including web accessibility language back in 1998. And then the state added its own state law the following year in 1999. And then we created the standards document at the state level in 2003. And so we built what we do on Section 508. And then more recently, a federal ADA Title II added language specifically highlighting web accessibility. And this was implemented this year in April. And then depending upon your agency, your organization size, it will go into effect in 2026 or 2027. So this is kind of you know, what we build everything on in order to do that accessibility work that we do. Next slide. Thank you. So, who are we testing for? So, yeah, this kind of gets into what I already said, making content accessible no matter what technology, what ability, etc., you are using to access it. So this makes access fair and equal, no matter if you are dealing with a permanent, temporary, or situational disability. I thought this might be a good example that a wider audience can relate to. So as an example, a permanent disability of low vision, a temporary disability, someone gets their eyes dilated and their vision has been compromised for a certain amount of time. And then situational is I'm outside looking at my phone screen and I have glaring sunlight and my vision has been impacted. So yeah, that kind of gives you an understanding of the how much impact building it in has to not only the people that rely on it day to day, but there's other circumstances that it is extremely helpful. And finally, comparing digital accessibility, this last one on the left, to physical accessibility. Access does not stop someone from getting where they want to go. So I'll kind of step into examples of that. So, who are we testing for? We're examples. A shopper wanting to purchase clothes or groceries online, a taxpayer wanting to submit their online taxes from start to finish, a citizen wanting to pay their utility bill online, a student gathering information for a research paper, or someone wanting to use online resources to stay connected with friends and family or to read about the latest news. So, just to get that to get that message home, we all have the same right to be able to do all the same things. And that's it for that slide.
Thank you, Lainey.
No problem.
All right. So website accessibility is a huge concept. And so we have the privilege of having some guiding structure to understand what we need to be building into our website. And WCAG does that. They also include some principles, and those principles will kind of umbrella all of the guidelines. And so if you understand the four main principles, the details kind of make sense as you go through the process. So that's my intent in the next few slides, is to kind of make it a little bit more comprehensible or understandable. So the core principles is based on four words: perceivable. Perceivable means that an accessible website is built for more than one sense. Since you don't know what sense a person uses to access your website, the WCAG guidelines help us include the right pieces. And so, for example, when you're building your website, you want your text content with you want to have, I'm sorry, you want images to have text content. You want audio media to have captions and transcripts. And also, if you're using color, that you use adequate contrast. So they give us kind of an understanding of what is minimally required to meet that. When it comes to operable, the principle of operable refers to essentially building a website that a person is able to operate with the input device they choose to use. And I'm going to give you some examples here in a minute about what I mean there. But it's what the person brings to the table that they can access your website. When it comes to understandable, now the prior two principles cover building a site that gets the content to the person. But if they can't comprehend the information that's there, are they really receiving it? So understandable gets at that the site needs to be understandable in the content and the function. So we'll give you some examples here in a minute of what makes a website accessible, for being understandable. And then the fourth is robust. Then the prior three principles will only work if a site is built in such a way that it is compatible with most browsers and a variety of assistive technology devices or software, whether it's the current updated version or an older version. So let's talk specifically more about perceivable. A person can use any of their senses to access your content. A website needs to be designed, like I said, for more than one sense. So if a person has a vision impairment and uses a screen reader to read content out loud to them, is alternative text available to, say, describe a picture? We assume that they're going to, whoever is accessing our website is going to receive the information. But if it's a visual interpretation of something without that text alternative that can be read out loud, that piece is not accessible. If a person is deaf, does the video have captions or a transcript available? This provides the individual with a text representation of the video audio. And if a person using your site has low vision, is there adequate color contrast to perceive the content? WCAG provides us with that ratio, so you don't have to figure the math out for that. But all of these are pieces that make a website perceivable for our senses. When we build a website to be operable, it means that a person must be able to operate the entire interface that you put together. If a website has a button to press or a link to click, it must be operated by the individual's device or software that activates all the functions. So this could be, like, for example, filling out a request for more information, or like filling out a job application, or it could be like Lainey had mentioned earlier, somebody shopping. So the ability to click on go to your shopping cart, the ability to fill in the information, and the ability to click and purchase something. That is what's important. When designing a website, we need to consider that an individual may operate your site by something different than a keyboard, the traditional keyboard mouse arrangement. Individuals might use their voice to operate a website, or they might use muscle-based movements, for example, with a switch activator, or they might use their fingertips on a screen. So WCAG guidelines consider the variety of ways a person's input devices operate. So you don't have to think through all of that if you follow this section of the guidelines. When it comes to understandable, an accessible website that's understandable makes sense. It considers your audience's reading level, and the interactions behave in a predictable way. So a person must be able to understand website information and comprehend how to operate your website. This is essentially what that means. If an individual can't understand your website, they will not succeed in interacting with it. This includes individuals that have cognitive impairments, reading disabilities, learning disabilities, and even age-related changes. And it could be temporary, like Lainey was talking about, somebody that's taking a medicine that changes perhaps the speed at which their brain functions. These are kinds of things that people can be experiencing while they're working on your website. So under understandable, it's best to use clear and simple language. You will build a site that's predictable to understand when a person uses your website for their comprehension. And then the fourth principle, robust, the website should be compatible to all technologies a person could use to operate the website. This includes any type of browser as well. You don't have to trade creativity and innovation design for accessibility. In many cases, accessibility is achieved by adding just additional features without changing the current design. So, like, for example, we have all types of different screen sizes now. People will look at a website or operate a website. And so that can be just a technical behind the scene change that may not change the appearance. People should be able to also choose the AT that they interact with on a website. So here's some examples of what makes a website more robust. Use responsive layouts, reduce horizontal scrolling, test for visibility on the variety of the screen sizes, and avoid using multiple column layouts when possible. So what are we testing on websites? With accessibility in mind, we test for function of a web page. All the element content and structure that's built into the page are now going to be checked for accessibility. That means we check your content you've included, like a button, if you put in a date selector, a form structure, a URL link, and a drop-down menu, and so forth. So those are all the bits and pieces of the components that you've built in your website. When it comes to testing website structure, we are looking to see how a person can navigate the page. And so what we want to know is, does it move in a logical reading order, or does it start at the top and then, jump all of a sudden to a whole nother section that's unexpected? So testing helps catch those things. Function, when you test for function, we also test to see how the page performs in a browser. And so you would be best served to test in more than one type of browser. So for example, you could use Foxfire, Edge, Chrome, or Safari. Those are just a few variety of browsers. In testing, we also review content. So we consider whether the content is understandable to many levels and many abilities. For example, when you proofread your website to check the text for spelling or grammar, consider the reading level that's used. Maybe simplify some of the word choices that are on there. This can be kind of a fun challenge when it's a state program, because we might have verbiage on a website we have to use that's well beyond plain language. But it's the other words I'm talking about, those that you can control and change. Now we have a session coming up. This is really going to be interesting. We have a session coming up. The very last one is on this aspect of plain language and learning how to use a reading assistive device to help you test for that. So I hope you're signed up for that. It's the Helper Bird session. Now, there could be other content on a page as well that needs to be tested. For example, if you have added a vendor link to your page, maybe this takes the person to someone else's page, but it's associated with your page. So you want to test that and then ask them to make changes. So an example could be like going to a Google form, check to make sure that that Google form is functional, or a payment to the vendor site to gather a payment. Also, content could be things that you've added on, like a document. So you want to check that for accessibility, ensure that the images and video and other media that you might add as well have the alternative ways to receive information on that information. Now, once we understand the what we need to test, then we need to know how we're going to test. And so this next session, Kyle will be addressing for you to walk you through the how we test.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. So you might be thinking, all this is great, but I don't know how I get started on all this. So there are several tools that are very helpful to get you started on the path. There are a lot of scanning tools that will statically analyze a page of your website. Some of those include Wave, XDevTools, and all of the main browsers have some sort of accessibility checker built in. So Firefox has one built in, Safari has one built in. Chrome actually has a name for it. It's called Lighthouse, Accessibility Lighthouse. Those are kind of the very, especially those built-in browser tools, are definitely the very, very basics of what you want to get started with. I would definitely recommend um, installing the Wave browser extension that's free. Hopefully, you should be able to have access to it as a Missouri State employee, and be able to install it to your browser and run it. And we'll go through a little example of that here in a little bit. Um, but Wave also has a page that you can put in a URL. It has to be a public URL. And obviously um, you obviously want to be uh, hopefully um, not that Wave takes information from the web page, it just scans it. It doesn't do anything with the information, but hopefully that information that's on that website is supposed to be public. But the inbuilt browser extensions work on local like development pages that aren't necessarily public to the internet. So that's one advantage of using the local browser extensions for checking for accessibility. And some other things that fall under the other category is U testing as either website developer, manager, someone in charge of creating web content. And that's kind of the main focus of this and the other talks here in the future. But also, if you want to have a more professional eye on it, there are accessibility testers, auditors out there that will give you an accessibility audit. We definitely recommend you to pay them. They are professionals. They're out there doing a job. Um, but they will definitely give you, at least a reputable one that knows what they're talking about, will definitely give you a good summary and a good audit of your website. Um, okay. The testing process, next slide. Like I said, you'll want to get a good um, baseline of where your website stands as far as all the scanning tools. Um, you'll you'll want to make sure all and like I said, that's more of a static shot of this page exactly how it is. So if there's multiple stages your page could be in or multiple pages you need to test, you need to run these static um, analyzers on each um, version that page could be in. Um, but a more of a dynamic test is a keyboard test, making sure everything that is on that page is able to be tabbed to. That if someone is only operating it through a keyboard, whether that be because they can't use a mouse and they're sighted, but they can use a screen, but they can use a keyboard, or if they're blind and they're using a screen reader and they're only using a keyboard. Those are two aspects of that. You obviously want to check the visual content of your website. A lot of the scanners and such will check that. They aren't quite as good as checking the contrast, but they might flag stuff. And so you'll want to check the contrast of the different elements of your page. But they do also have built-in color contrast checkers that you can put in the colors. If you know what the colors of the text in the background is, you can put in the colors and and it will tell you, does this color contrast meet the guidelines? You'll want to check the different mobile view or desktop view or tablet view that your website can be in. And you'll want to make sure that your website works well at different magnification levels, specifically up to 200%, which WCAG does call out. Um, and
And we did have this is Lainey, we did have a question.
yes.
Do these tools check a PDF that is viewed inside the browser? And like for example, like the automated scanning tools
Yeah.
or the visual color checker, things like that. To my knowledge, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've never seen someone do that. That's actually a good idea to check that. However, all all of the modern Office apps, Word, um, Adobe, etc., anything you're creating a PDF from, they they have accessibility checkers in them. It's kind of off topic, but since I know Eileen did mention we do to make the documents accessible, it's sort of tangentially related. All of those have accessibility checkers in them and will check the content even before you send it anywhere. And if you make sure and pass that checker, and also if you're creating a PDF from like a Word document, I would say also provide the Word document as well as the PDF. But B, when you're creating that PDF, make sure and is it export to PDF and not print to PDF, lady?
Correct.
Okay, yes, export to PDF. Do not print to PDF because that destroys the accessibility in that PDF. Um, and this is my next slide, correct? When testing. Okay, when testing with AT, we do have, and for this whole talk, we did have a couple assumptions that we're kind of coming into all this with. There are a couple places that AT doesn't catch just because it's so integrated into the web and into the web experience. It's kind of gone a next level beyond any sort of AT product itself, like a third party screen reader or a physical device that you're helping to control your computer with. Um, One of those are captions. And transcripts. Obviously, you want to make the content available, the captions available on your videos, and a transcript document available for your videos if you want to provide that too. But that's not necessarily something. It's sort of an AT, but it's you just want to make sure you have it and they're accurate and they're good. So that's not really necessarily something we are testing. You just need to make sure you have them. And also audio description. Make sure you have, especially a very visual video out there that is like, for example, only video and no talking and only visuals. That is the bane of my existence. I come across a YouTube video and I can't see it, and all it is video. I'm like, oh, come on. But an audio description track beyond that, that is a sort of AT product, but it's not specifically an AT device that we are testing. And another aspect and angle we're not covering in any of these topics, we might be testing a screen reader and we might be testing someone using Dragon Dictation or a head-mounted mouse and a switch, but we're not testing those in conjunction with each other. We're not testing multiple disabilities. So we're not testing if someone is deaf and blind, which is a common set of disabilities that go together. Um, and honestly, we aren't really testing a whole lot of the side of deafness either, just because like some of how that goes back to the transcripts and the subtitles and video captions that we had to draw the line somewhere, and that's kind of where we draw the line. Drew the line of where AT kind of covers. So those are the aspects that we're not necessarily addressing, but is definitely a valid thing to keep in mind because it's not related to the AT products that we're going to be demoing here in a little bit. And I think Lainey is next.
Yes. Okay. So, where does testing and the work of testing happen at? So, the development level. So, this is the, the early stages. You're building a site, building an application, even going as simple as thinking about building a document. It's in the beginning stages. It's when you're planning it and you're building it in. So you'll use your resources and use the tools that we talked about, the WCAG and the best practices for good document creation for your source documents, all those things. It will happen early and it will continue on. At the agency level, we think of this as people are creating content to post on their websites, um, website editors, and you know, and also kind of to speak to that, that leadership is supporting you in that work, and that you're able to make those documents, or make your web content that you're going to publish out accessible. And then related to that is document creators. And this is probably even a larger number of folks. There's a good number of folks that create documents on the daily, and they may be published out or shared internally with all your staff or publicly out on a website. And, testing needs to be happening at those creation stages, and having, all of that ability to be able to have the education to do so, and the support from leadership. Okay, and next. So when does it get done? And we already kind of mentioned this. We call it shifting to the left, shifting to the beginning stages of the project. It's just built in. We hear a lot about security of applications and websites and networks and everything that we do. It's equally important to all of those kind of elements, and to get the testing and the best practice in at the beginning stages. And testing with AT, definitely come and see all of our next upcoming sessions. You'll learn a lot, and it'll be eye-opening, and you're definitely going to learn a lot from those sessions. And policy. It's tested when a policy is carefully put in place to ensure testing is planned for. And again, as I mentioned, it has support from the top down that it happens. And then it's tested when there is, there can be a formal complaint from a federal agency, or a more informal complaint from, a citizen. And you have to come up with a resolution process to be able to make that happen. And then that comes with good, complaint resolution and planning for it. And then when the appropriate staff are correctly trained and know how to do it, that's when it's going to get done. And then finally, we can't forget, we do website development within our own agencies. We have people that update content, but we also many times contract out websites, little third-party apps that we embed into our sites, all of those things. And we have to have the appropriate accessibility language in those agreements and in those contracts in order to have it understood. It needs to be in there in the beginning, and we're not hustling and frantically trying to make something accessible later when it wasn't clearly stated in those agreements. All right.
Okay. So, and I just wanted to throw this slide in here to kind of show you what is possible. So if you're not familiar with video games, there is a racing series out there called Forza. And they Turn 10, the company behind Forza, decided that for their upcoming Forza Motorsport release, they wanted to make it the most accessible racing game out there. And so they started from the very planning stages of what does an accessible racing game look like? Their developers were on board, their managers were on board, all the way up to the top. And when they started building, they had some conceptions about what they wanted to do, but they took it in stride and worked with the community with people with disabilities, blind players that are going to play this game. How did this feedback that we're giving to you about your race, how did that work? What can we do better? what has worked for other similar games out there, because there have been sort of similar games, but they're not mainstream games. And how does all this work? And they put out demos for the community to look at, press releases. They got feedback from the community at large, and that culminated in it releasing last October. And it is a full video game, mainstream game that is completely accessible for honestly anyone with any sort of disability. However you want to play the game, you can. Blind people can play and drive a car around a racetrack as fast as they want to go, with however much skill they have or don't have, because of the information, the accessibility um, features that they added to allow blind people to play. Anyone with any physical disabilities or motor disabilities, they're able to customize the game to suit their controls, suit their controller, and they can play however they want to. And I thought that was really amazing of that they started from the very day one get-go of let's make this the most accessible racing game out there. And you wouldn't think that a racing game would be accessible to someone like myself that can't see the screen, but yet I can go in and play with anyone online and race along with anyone I want. My last slide here is we're going to do a little scanning example. We wanted to show a demo of like Wave in action. Um, so come on. Um, Crap, hold on. Can't get back to the Zoom.
While Kyle's connecting, can you, for those of you participating, if you could note in the chat, how many of you are using this information to train others? Most likely, maybe a couple of yeses. Yeah, Leilani Carlson out in Maine has started to do some training too. It's really impressive to see people stepping out and doing this work. All right, and then I'm going to turn it back to Kyle here.
Yeah. Hold on. Looking for. Okay. Um, so we created, I assume everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, Kyle.
okay, there we go. And so we created these two web pages, a before page and an after page. And the before page is not quite the most inaccessible page we could create, but it is very inaccessible, which I'll show you here in a second. And the after page is, as much as we could clean it up, the accessible version of that. And so this, uh, I'm going to just demo real quick the Wave plugin on this and what it will show. So you could, when you install the Wave tool, it'll be up an icon in your toolbar. You can click that and it will bring it up, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control Shift U, or I believe if you right click with your mouse, it's in the pop-up menu. So there's multiple ways you can activate it. But as I said before, this Wave tool and AxDev tools and all the other scanning tools like this, they're static analyzers. So whatever state your page is in and you scan it, that's what it's going to scan. So I'm going to press Control Shift U, and the wave tool is going to come up, and you can probably tell that has a whole bunch of buttons and different colored icons and stuff that popped up. This, especially with this inaccessible page, this is probably going to get a little bit overwhelming. So you can turn some of these off if you're looking for something particular. So I went to the top and I'm going to find this tab bar and I'm going to select the details tab. And this brings up all the different items you can turn on and off. And the first two options are errors and alerts, and you really want to pay attention to those, especially the errors, because those are important. But one thing I like to turn off to kind of declutter the screen is the features, structural elements, and the ARIA. ARIA is definitely something to pay attention to if you're getting into some more advanced stuff. But this time we're going to turn it off. So like I said, we have the alerts. And actually, I just realized I'm on the after page. Uh, so I'm going to go over to the before page, run it again. Details. There we go. Turn off the features, turn off the structure, turn off the ARIA. Okay. So we have 3 errors, 14 alerts. And so this is kind of where you'd start taking inventory of what this finds. Um, and depending on your website, you may have fewer, you may have less. Don't be overwhelmed by a lot of this. Take it one step at a time. If you're not in charge of a website, start documenting all of this and start, if you need to create tickets to make this accessible, start on that process. But just take it one step at a time. It's not meant to be overwhelming. It's never, Rome was never built in a day. It's not going to happen in a day. It might take weeks, months, maybe even a year. But as long as you're working on it, that's honestly what counts. But if you want more information on any of these, you can take one of these alerts, like suspicious alternative text. We have an image in there that probably isn't, that either doesn't have alternative text or doesn't have good alternative text that Wave thinks about. We can click the more information link, and that changes the tab up at top, and you get really good information and reference information and examples of the specific issue. So if you can include all of that in your ticket or note to whoever you're sending it to, or you can use this reference information to help if you're in charge of creating the content and fixing it, to fix the example. And so that is about it. Let me go quickly back over to the after. And so that you want to note, even here, when we have the after page, that's supposed to be the more accessible one. We go to the details tab. This still has 6 alerts on it. So even though we made the website as accessible as we could be, there still might be a couple issues, whether they're something you can't fix because of some technology that you're using for whatever reason. We have a couple on our DHEWD websites that have that issue. Or they're just something that doesn't really impact very much. And it's like, okay, we could fix that, but we have bigger issues to deal with right now. That is definitely a very expected thing. It's not going to be perfect. Even the WCAG website, even that is not fully WCAG compliant. So if if the people in charge of distributing information and upholding WCAG, even if they're not 100% WCAG accessible, and no website is going to be 100% accessible just due to the nature and the content of it, I think we all can level up our websites a little bit more. And like I said before, it's just about starting, taking a couple steps here and there, and always trying to improve the content you're putting out there. I think that's about it. I think you're the last one, Eileen.
Awesome.
There,
Thank
Take over
hey,
the share
there's a
unless
quick
there's
question.
questions. Yes.
Okay, so Tracy says it's cool to see you use Wave with a screen reader. I was wondering if it was accessible with a screen reader as it is such a visual looking tool.
Yeah, they do make a good job of making it accessible. Well, one thing I did mean to say is I think not that when you're talking about either Wave, I know all of our state employees have access to Wave. You may or may not have access to AxDev tools, but if for some reason you do have AxDev tools, that is another option out there. I think the Wave output and information of how it presents it is a little bit more um, better targeted at um, end users and stakeholders and business folk. I think a developer might get more use out of XDev tools if you're more of the developer side or technically minded side. But either or can be used. It's just whichever one you prefer, whichever one you have access to. I 90% of the time use Wave, even though I am a developer because that's what we have access to. So either can be used, but yes.
Great. Any more questions in the chat, Lainey?
None at this time.
Okay, thanks. All right. So let me get back to the PowerPoint here. And one of the things that I want to touch on back to back with what Kyle just said is just, if you're doing this for the first time or you're training people, the most important thing is to just start. As you do the work, you start to develop that competence, and that brings your confidence out. And then you'll feel more comfortable doing it. And the waves of, knowledge will come. So just get involved as where you can is what's important. And one of the things that we in Missouri are going to be doing is allowing state employees to borrow an AT testing kit for testing websites. And this will be available this year. We will have on laptops these softwares, and we'll have devices available for them to be plugged into. So we're including in our testing kits and in the series NVDA, a screen reader. We will include voice activated software, Dragon Professional. We're including Zoom text with this. It's a magnifying software. Then the devices would be a head mouse nano that is paired with a Jelly Bean switch. So that activates it, but the actual head mouse is what's controlling the on-screen cursor. And we'll also include an iPad so that testing can be done on that size of screen with VoiceOver. So iPad/VoiceOver. And then the last one is HelperBird. This type of assistive technology is for reading disabilities, learning disabilities, but it also can help us test for that understandability of a website by looking at the grammar, by looking at symbols and so forth. So we'll explain all that as we go through each of the sessions. And so you'll start to get very familiar with our testing pages because this is what we will be using for the series. But at the end of our series, and when we get to December, we'll have an in-person meeting available for state employees. If you are on this call and you're with Missouri State Employment and you are interested in being a part of that, contact myself or Lainey Strange directly. This will be eventually a kit that's folded in our device loan program called ETC. And what will be involved for borrowing this kit will be to complete an agency agreement. And then for about a 5-week period, you'll be able to borrow the device and test if you're working on projects or just learn how to use the AT for testing. And then what's nice about this device loan program is includes a return shipping. So you keep the original packaging and then you can return everything through UPS at our cost. And so that's what ETC will offer going forward into the coming year. But other than that, this would conclude our session. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, and then we can open it up for any questions.
This is Lainey. We did answer a question in the chat, but I wanted to just go ahead and speak it out loud in case someone didn't pop over there.